Okay, great. Well, I think that we're live on YouTube, so I'm just going to say a couple words about myself, and then I'm going to introduce our featured guest, Karen Rose. I'm Emily Walker. I work with the U.S. Embassy in Algeria. I'm in charge of running the cultural centers that we have around the country of Algeria. One of them is in Algiers, which is the American Cultural Center Algiers, or the ACCA, and that's who's hosting this call today. But we also have other cultural centers in different cities, including Constantine, Oran, Beshar, and Ouargla. So I encourage anyone who's watching, if you're located near any of those cities, please do check out our cultural centers post-COVID once everything opens and returns to normal. There's lots of cool things going on there. You can talk to other Algerians who are interested in American culture. You can check out DVDs, you can check out books, you can practice English, and you can listen to kind of cool talks with speakers like the one we have today, which we are doing online instead of in person in these coronavirus times. So with that, I think we're just gonna kind of wait for a couple more people to come in this room, and then I will introduce to you our featured guest. So I think a lot of you know our guest today, Karen Rose. I'm just gonna give you her kind of professional background, and then she'll tell you more about herself. So Karen Rose is an internationally recognized expert in internet policy, technology, and development, and she's been working to make the internet better for 20 years. She's the principal of Zinnia Digital, a consultancy that helps organizations and companies succeed in the digital world. She lives here in Algiers with her husband, John Desrocher, who is the US ambassador to Algeria. And I'd love to ask Karen that was her professional bio, but I'd love to ask Karen to tell us a little bit more about her upbringing and her personal life, and maybe then what brought her to Algiers.
Sure, great. And thanks so much, Emily, for having me. And hello to everybody tuning in on YouTube. I'm really looking forward to answering some of your questions. And I'm really pleased to be here to help you with English conversation. So thank you so much for the invitation. So yeah, so I grew up in outside of Chicago, Illinois. And Chicago is in the middle of the country. It's in an area of the United States called the Midwest. And Chicago is the third largest city in the United States. So it's a very big city. So I was born in Chicago and grew up in the suburbs there. My father was a factory worker. He worked in a factory that made tractors. So he was the person at the end of the line when people were making the parts for the tractors that used to inspect the parts to make sure that they were of good quality. But he worked on the factory floor. My mother worked jobs in the evening to help bring home some extra money. So I came from a very, very modest family, a very modest household. When I was 9 years old, unfortunately, my father died. So my mother was the one who brought up me and my brother. I have one older brother, he's 5 years older, and he still lives in Illinois. But it was very difficult, as you might imagine. My mother, because she did not have really an education, my mother had to work 3 jobs in order to support me and my brother and our family. And she was very determined that, you know, we would not fall into real poverty, right? So she worked 3 jobs. So my brother and I, we had to spend a lot of time on our own and by ourselves. And she told a story to me once, and we really didn't realize how difficult of an upbringing we had, but she said that sometimes at the end of the week, after working 3 jobs, she would only have 25 cents left in her wallet. So if you can imagine that, being a mother with 2 kids, and at the end of the week, only having 25 dinars, it's pretty challenging. But my family and my father before he died and my mother, they were very, they felt that education was very important. So they always encouraged us to do our best in school and continue with our education as high as we could go, because they believed that that was really the key to setting you up for better things in life. So I went to school. I was always very focused on school and my grades. I went to university, and I went to the University of Wisconsin in Madison. So that's close to Chicago, but in a different state. And in the United States, you may know university is very expensive. So like my mother, when I went to university, I ended up working 3 jobs at university. So I worked at a radio station in the morning, and I used to go in very early before the host came on at 6 in the morning and open up the radio station. Then I went to school, and then in the afternoon, I went to work, and I worked in an appliance repair store. So a place you would go if you needed to get your TV fixed or your vacuum cleaner fixed. So I used to help the mechanics with the parts for all the appliances. And then in the evening, I would work at a restaurant. So it was very challenging for me going to university. But I'm very proud to say that I managed to graduate at very high up in my class, very high ranked, and with a double major in telecommunications and psychology. So then after university, I went on to graduate school, and I went to a university called Northwestern University in Chicago. And I studied telecommunications there too. Telecommunications, science, management, and policy. So I got a master's degree from Northwestern University. And later, and this was a while after though, I also got an MBA, a master's in business administration. And later on, I also got an MBA. So I really stayed true to my father's wishes and my mother's wishes of continuing my education. And that really helped me, of course, coming from a very modest background, to get probably farther than most people would think. When I was in graduate school, one of my professors recognized my talent in telecommunications, and the internet at that time was becoming a big thing. And I had been on the internet very early. So I started out, my first job was in internet policy. One of my professors encouraged me to apply for an internship with the Federal Communications Commission, which is our telecommunications regulator in the United States. So I worked at the Federal Communications Commission and then went to another agency called NTIA, another agency related to telecommunications. And there I worked on internet policy. And one of the things that was my focus was something called the Internet Domain Name System. And I worked in international work related to the coordination globally of the Internet Domain Name System. So early in my career, I helped write some of the policies and procedures for how the global internet is coordinated today. So that was very interesting. Then I went and I worked at an internet startup company, and I had always wanted to move to Australia. And I did a lot of work in international affairs before, and I had traveled all over. So I decided to join an internet startup company in Sydney, which was great. Then after I worked, I did business affairs there. After that, then I joined an organization called the Internet Society and was on the executive team and focused on internet development for 10 years. So I spent a lot of time working with countries about how to improve internet infrastructure, how to improve how the internet works for countries and regions around the world. So I also got to travel a lot with that too. And after the Internet Society, then I decided to go out on my own and do consulting in internet policy, technology, and development, which is my area of expertise. So today I work with organizations like the World Bank and other similar organizations, again, to help countries improve internet access, improve internet speed and affordability. And of course, I'm in Algeria. Now, I'm in the United States today, right now, because I came back to do some work on our house, and then COVID happened. So I'm continuing to do work on our house right now, and inshallah, we'll come back, I hope maybe in July when everything kind of works out. But, you know, as you know, in Algeria, I'm very active, of course, with my husband, going to different cities. But I also like to help out the technical community here in Algeria and women in tech as well. So that's a little bit about me.
Thank you. That was a great story. And we do miss you here in Algiers, so we're excited for you to be back, but hope things are going well in the US. We have a question to ask you. This question was asked in a lot of different ways, but this one came in on Facebook. It's a question from Tariq Najda, and he wants to know, what was your reaction to the nomination of your husband when he was nominated to be US ambassador to Algeria? What had you heard about Algeria before? And then what did you find Algeria to be like once you arrived?
Yeah, well, I was very excited, of course. I had done some travel in North Africa as part of my work. I had been to Morocco, I had been to Tunisia, and I had been to Egypt, but I had never been to Algeria. And to be honest, I really didn't know that much about Algeria. So I wasn't sure exactly what to expect. But it was very exciting because it was an opportunity for me to, you know, come and live in a place and get to know a country that, you know, I had never been to before. So it was really exciting. I was very excited for the adventure. And I have to say, Algeria is even better than I could have imagined. So I'm so happy about his nomination.
In that vein, lots of people want to know what's your favorite place you've been to in Algeria, including Rania Sharik asked via Instagram, what's your favorite Walaya specifically? So maybe tell us about some of your best travel.
You know, that is really, honestly, that is really the hardest. Because one of the things I think that is so great about Algeria is that there are so many different things and so many different parts of culture everywhere in the country. Between the East and the West and the North and the South, there's always something very different to discover in every part of Algeria. So it's really hard to say what's your favorite. Some of the places that I have really enjoyed, and in thinking about it, have been places where I've gone with my family when they visited. So I think it was as much, you know, my family coming with me. So I took my mother to Tlemcen, which was wonderful. It was a great place. It's a wonderful city for tourism, and my mother really loved it and enjoyed it too. So it made it very special. We had my sister-in-law and my nephew down to Timimoun, which was very special, of course. It's a very beautiful place. A couple other places. One of the first places that we went when we came was Tamanrasset, which, you know, was amazing, and it left a really big impression. And Constantine was also a place that my husband and I went really early to. So yeah, there's really something to offer everywhere in Algeria. And that's one of the reasons I think it's so exciting. There's always something new and different to see.
Thank you for that. Going back to your experience in business, several people have asked if you have any tips for people starting their own businesses, and maybe you could offer some challenges to either starting your own business or starting out in the business world in Algeria.
Yeah, so, you know, There's a bunch of different philosophies, and if you ask a different person about business tips, you're going to get different answers. And some of that, I think, depends on the industry that you're in, where you are. Are you starting a business as a young person, as an older experienced professional? But my number one recommendation would be to do something, first of all, that you really love. Because if you're starting a business, you're going to have challenges. There's going to be a lot of work. Starting a business is not something where you can just say, oh, I'm going to work a few hours a day and things will come. Especially starting a business, you have to be really committed. So it's best to do something that you're going to enjoy, doing, and you're going to enjoy committing and dedicating a good part of your life to. Second of all is think about a good business plan before you start. You may not have to have all of the details spelled out, but have an idea. What's the unique attraction of your product or your service? How are you going to deliver that service, right? What is your supply chain going to look like? How are you going to deliver it to market? How are you going to deliver your service to people? What are some of the key costs that are going to be involved? In addition to production, if you're doing a product, your distribution costs, your other overhead costs. So get an idea in your mind about what are the real drivers of the cost of your business. And then if you have that framework, I believe some people like to plan everything out in the beginning, but I'm more of a person that sort of believes in organic growth. You start with an idea, you grow it from there, and then you see what other opportunities might be available to you, where you can take your next step. And just one example, in the startup that I worked for, we actually started out with one product, which at the time it was very difficult to do website development. So we had found a very easy web development tool, and then we built a system around that for being able to give people websites very cheaply. This was many years ago. This was probably even before some of you on this call were even born. The thing that we started with our business with turned out not to be the thing that made us the most money. So we started with that product, but then that opened different relationships to us as a business. And we ended up making our most money building an online directory. And this was in the days before Google. If you can imagine the days before Google, there were a number of different search engines. So we ended up actually building a search engine that was the thing that actually made our business the most money, not the thing that we started with. So I guess, in sum, start with an idea, start with what you're passionate about, make sure you can make money, but then be open to the different paths that business might lead you.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a very good tip, that, it might not be what it looked like, but you need to be flexible and open to it. Yeah. Also, when you were discussing kind of your career development, you mentioned a couple mentors that you had along the way, including the university professor who encouraged you to do an internship at the FCC. What's the importance, do you think, of finding someone who might be higher up in the career that you want, asking them maybe they could be your mentor, or modeling your career off them? How important is mentorship?
Yeah, it's really important. And I think it's important to have insight, if you can find one or two good people that, you trust, that's great. And one of the things is that people who are further along in their careers tend to like helping younger people. It makes them feel good about their own career choice as well, to help younger people along. So the first thing is, I think there's a lot of older people who are going to be receptive, or people who have been in the career longer that are going to be receptive to helping you. So that's great. So go out and pursue that. And then also, I think, pursue other different, other people to talk to, because again, I find, at least in my life, that I like to put together the answers to things for myself. I like to talk to different people and see what their experiences are, and then try and figure out how that relates to me. So I think it's also useful to have other perspectives, and to come up with a path that works for you. So find somebody you can trust. Hopefully they'll want to probably talk to you. If the first person you try and get as a mentor, is too busy, find somebody else. But then get other opinions too as you move forward in your career.
Thanks. This next question comes from Gomery on YouTube, and he wants to know, or she, is it possible for any person from humble origins to do what you were able to do, in your opinion?
I think so. You just have to have the right attitude, I think. Well, that's very important, is having the right attitude. I'll tell you a story that my mother told me about her grandmother. So my mother also came from a very modest family, and her grandmother also came from a modest family. But her grandmother used to like, with her friends, to dress in their best clothes and go and have lunch downtown in the fancy restaurants in the city. Now, these were expensive restaurants. Most people would say they're not for your kind of people, And so my mother would say, well, how can you go to these fancy restaurants? What if you go and you don't have enough money? So my great-grandmother used to say to my mother, look, you should never believe that you don't belong somewhere. Put on your best and go. And if you go to a restaurant, for example, and you sit down and you open the menu and you find the prices are too expensive, you just say to the waiter, oh, I hear your restaurant has very good dessert and coffee. Me and my friend here are just here for dessert and tea. So the story is that you can always find a way. You should always believe that you belong. You may have to put on your finest. You may have to learn how to act in polite company, but there's always a way to go. And I really like that story because it means that, you just have to put your foot in the door, and you can always find a way to make it work. Just ask for dessert and coffee.
Oh, thank you for that. I love that story. This question is from Kiro on YouTube, and it is, do you like boxing?
Oh.
The plant. I might know the answer to this because Karen and I have taken some boxing lessons together, and she is much, much better at me than me. She beats me up every lesson, but how do you talk a little bit about boxing and then talk about other sports that you're into, because I know you are very athletic.
Yes, so I love boxing. Boxing is my favorite. I love to do boxing, and I like to watch boxing on television. It drives my husband a little crazy because I sit there and I commentate. I'm like the sports announcer when I watch boxing, put your left up, put your right up. So I really like boxing because it's a full body workout, and boxing is very intense. But it's also a mental workout too. I find in boxing that there are a few sports that really focus the mind like boxing. So it's a strategic sport, it's a physical sport, and it's just you in the ring with your own abilities. So I really love it. I really love doing boxing, and I really love watching it as well. Other sports that I do, I also am, well, before COVID, now I have to say I've been off for 6 weeks, so I'm a little bit afraid of where I'm going to be when I go back. But I also like to do weightlifting and CrossFit. In weightlifting, my favorite lift is the deadlift, which is basically just picking up very heavy weight off the floor. And I like to do that, and I think it's very good for women. My top is 100 kilos. And 100 kilos is about, I think, 225 pounds, 220 pounds. So 100 kilos is my top. I was trying to get to 120 this year, but I'm a little bit behind with the COVID. But I think weightlifting is very good for women. And many studies have shown that weightlifting for women is very good because it helps make the bones stronger, not just your muscles, but your bones stronger. And as women get older, you may know that women's bones tend to get brittle. They can break easy. It's a problem called osteoporosis. But many studies have shown that weightlifting helps make the bones strong. So I think weightlifting is great for overall women's health.
Thank you for that. This is another business related question, but I want to go back to it because I think it's a good one. Nora Mo on YouTube wants to know, do you think women have to overcome more challenges and do double the effort basically to succeed in business?
I still think it's the case that men and women are treated differently in business. I still do think that's the case. And I do think many times women do have to work harder and smarter in many instances than men to achieve. One of the reasons for that, and I think things will change as more women get into higher and higher positions, is that when you're hiring someone for a job, people tend to hire people who are like themselves. It's a very well-known bias in business and hiring, that hiring managers have a bias to hire people more like themselves. This is one of the reasons why when you were hiring in a company, they try and have hiring panels to have more diverse people looking at candidates. But if you can imagine that, if traditionally like men are in the levels of management and are doing the hiring, it's very natural for men to have a tendency, again, because humans tend to hire people that are like themselves, to hire men, right? So it can be a lot harder for women to advance in certain areas. At the same time, I think, if you're a woman in business, you have to be smart and know how to take advantage of your situation. Sometimes being unique is a benefit. So I'm, for example, in the tech industry, which tends to be male focused. But I have found to be able to leverage the fact that I'm different. I know that I'm going to stand out in a lot of meetings, especially early in my career. I know I'm going to be the different one, and there's going to be a different focus on me than maybe other people. So I've tried to learn to make the most out of that situation, to not have it be a disadvantage, but for it to be an advantage.
Thank you for that. Well, a good follow-on to that, a question that just came in from Nora is, what is success? Is it making money or is it doing something you love?
I think that success is more about you personally being happy, right? In whatever sense that means. And I don't think money is the answer, and I'll tell you why. So in my job, I have had an opportunity to talk to and deal with CEOs very high up in, in big companies, people who make a lot of money. And one of the things that I have found is that every time, or you go to a dinner party and, there's very, very rich people, you always find that when you hear them talk, even they may have access to a private jet, they may have the biggest house you can imagine, but they're always looking at somebody else to see how they stack up. There's always somebody that's going to have more money, right? And even rich people are always looking to see who has more than them. So if you value money as something for happiness, you will never be satisfied, because no matter how high you get, you'll always be saying, oh, somebody has more than me. So I really think it is more, now obviously, having money, and I know coming from a modest family, having little money can be very difficult. So I think you need to be able to make enough money to afford you a comfortable life. But after that, you really need to find other sources of success and happiness. That's just my opinion.
Thanks. This is a question from Memoir Delot from YouTube. Do you find it difficult moving from country to country and coping with new lifestyle and food?
No, I'm a very adventurous person. So even before I met my husband and I got married in 2007. So that wasn't that long ago. So we were both professional people before we met and before we got married. And I had always done work in international affairs, doing international internet policy and development. So I had traveled all over the world. And I have to say, that was something when I was young and we didn't have much means, much money. We didn't go anywhere. We couldn't afford fancy vacations. My aunt and my uncle used to take me and my mother on vacation because we really, we couldn't afford our own. I was always fascinated with what was going on in the world, like what was going on outside of the little place that I lived. So I always really had that sense of adventure, and I always knew I wanted to get out in the world. I just didn't want to be limited to my neighborhood, to my block, to my circumstance. I wanted to get out and explore. So I have to say I did it, right? And I'm really excited, and I love exploring new places, and I love exploring new foods. So it's a joy for me.
I'm sure many Algerians watching this would like to know, what are some of your favorite Algerian foods?
Okay. Yeah. So I think probably my favorite is shakshuka. And I really love it because it's also different in different regions of Algeria. I like spicy food too. I really like spicy food from Musada. I think it is, somebody will have to correct me. Is it Zifti? Zef? I can't pronounce it. I'm sorry. But I really like hot, spicy food. I love brick from Annaba, like the big burek that's like gigantic and huge. I like that. Of course, I like a good couscous. I like a good meshwi. And yeah, so there's a lot there. I really like Algerian food, and I miss it being in the United States. I miss it so much.
A couple people are wondering, what are you doing to fill your days in the United States right now? And what is lockdown like there? What's the situation like? Give us some more details.
Sure. So I came back to the United States to renovate our house, to do some improvements to our house back here. You might be able to hear some of the banging in the background. So our house was originally built in 1925. So it's not that old compared to the historic houses in Algeria. But when we bought it, it was many things in the house were original. So it was kind of time for us to do a pretty big renovation. So I spend a lot of my time here making sure the work is being done properly. I think, as I mentioned, I worked at an appliance store when I was a kid. I started actually in high school and I worked in an appliance store until I was in college. So I know a little bit about mechanics. I know a bit about plumbing. I know a bit about engineering and construction. So I spend my days making sure the plumber is doing the right thing, making sure that the builders are doing the right thing, and then doing things like finding a sink and finding that sort of thing. What is lockdown like here? It is, I mean, most people, so I'm in Washington, D.C., and Washington, D.C. is kind of one of the places, it's not like New York, but people are really looking at the numbers and the number of cases around here very closely. So people are good here about staying home, about making sure they maintain social distance. In our stores that are open, the grocery store and like the home improvement store where you can get hammers and nails, thank goodness for us, is open. But you can only have so many people in the store at one time. Everybody wears the mask. So it's, it's tough, but everybody is doing their part, which is good.
Thanks. This question is also from YouTube from Abdel Ghani. Abdel says that he and his girlfriend from Kansas City say hi. They're hoping to meet up after the quarantine. And their question is, do you think that a couple from different cultures can live together in love?
Oh, yes. Well, hello. Hi. Inshallah. We'll see each other soon. Yes, I think absolutely. Absolutely. Because I think, love and love for someone else, it breaks down the boundaries that I think we as human beings sometimes put up artificially. So I think, when two people really love each other, they find a way to work it out. And that difference between people often can lead to a really enriching life. And I know that, children that grow up in households where the parents are from two different cultures, often have a very unique perspective on life. They feel that they get to benefit from the different cultures of their parents. Many are bilingual. They get to learn two languages. So I do think that, cross-cultural relationships are a wonderful thing. And I hope that if you're in one, inshallah, it works for you.
Speaking of cross-cultural things, you, Boo, noticed that you speak a little Arabic. And I'm wondering if you could tell, we've had a number of questions of people asking how they can improve their English.
Mm-hmm.
And we put some links in the YouTube chat to some resources we have on the embassy website for English learning. But perhaps you have some thoughts on learning a new language, or for people who, really want to learn English, what they can do.
So I will admit, one of the things I'm not good at learning new languages. It's very tough for me. And it's been very hard since I was young. The first language that I took in high school was German. And I was terrible. I was terrible at it. And I had to take German, the first level of German 3 times in order to progress. So learning language is a challenge for me. So one of the tricks that I have learned is to listen to music For me, language sticks better in my head if I can hear it, if I can really, you know, if it comes by music. I don't do well in here's a book, here's the noun, here's the verb, here's the table. That doesn't work for me. So I will say, I lived in Egypt briefly, and at the time, I don't know if you know the singer Nancy Algeria from Lebanon. She had a very popular song called Ahwanus, and Amr Diab, who's an Egyptian singer. So I actually learned my first Arabic through singing the song Ahwanus, by Nancy Algeria. And so I find listening to music, having something that, or a story that you can relate to connect things in your head is very useful. Because for me, I can't, if somebody says here, memorize this list of 20 words, forget it. It's not going to happen. I have to do something that's going to stick ideas together. So that's my recommendation.
I totally agree. I need a story that explains how the words go together, or some device. Algerian Mohammed says he would love to hear you do a British accent, but you don't have to do that. Don't worry. I won't ask you to sing that song either.
I can sing part of it. Okay, you want me to sing part of it? Does anybody want me to sing part of it in YouTube? Okay, maybe you can sing along. Maybe you'll know this. I think it's from around 2000. Okay, you ready? Okay, ما فيش حاجة تيجي كده إدى حبيبي كده ويرجع زمان. See, I can remember it from that. And yeah, so but you know what I need to do? This reminds me, I actually, maybe people can suggest some Algerian songs that I can listen to that maybe also has an English translation. That would be great, because most of the songs that I've been listened to in the past are Egyptian or Nancy Ashram. So if you can suggest some good Algerian songs to help me with Arabic, I would appreciate it.
That's great. Leave those suggestions in the comments on YouTube. I would like those too. I think we'll just move on to our last question that we have. This question is from Bagu, and he wants to know what are some challenges you see in Algeria for the next year? I would ask this more, what do you want to accomplish in your final year in Algeria? Are there still some places you want to see, some things you want to do?
Yeah, sure. So, so some places that I'd like to visit that I haven't been to. I haven't been to Ouargla yet, so I'd like to go there. I'd like to go to Tizi Ouzou. I have not been there yet. Janet, I would love to go to Janet. I would also like to see some more of the Roman ruins around Annaba, Constantine. I'd really like to do that. So those are some places that I would definitely like to see and I would like to do. Yeah, so those are some places that I'd like to go.
Any other goals for the next year in Algeria?
Any other goals? You know, not at the, I mean, I would like to be able to come back soon. I do miss everybody there. But you know, I enjoy my time with the Algerian people. I always try and go and find new things, or you know, if somebody has a project and they would like me to come, I try and go when I can. And you know, I like to highlight those things on my Facebook page to help draw attention to other things that people in Algeria are doing, because it's a really wonderful place. It's a really wonderful country. And I think there's so much to see. And if I can help highlight those things, then I'm very proud, and I feel like I've accomplished something too.
Well, thank you so much for your time. Thanks for answering all these questions. And we really look forward to seeing you back here in Algiers soon.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. And there were a couple other ones on my Facebook page and that we didn't get to, and I will try and answer those on my Facebook page for the people who asked.
Okay, so visit Karen in Algeria is your Facebook page, right?
Yes, Karen Rose in Algeria. Yep.
Okay, great. Thank you guys.
Okay.